Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. Welcome to my channel. My name is Mohammed and I'm going to be taking you through some FPL tips for the upcoming game week and answering some potential questions that might be coming from people that are kind of spreading around the net right now. If you like what I do, if you like the videos that are there, just don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps a lot. Thank you very much. It's a good day here. We've got an upcoming weekend, a long weekend, so that should be very, very nice. I'm excited for the football that's coming as well, especially for Tottenham versus Liverpool. That should be a very, very nice match. I can't wait to see what happens then. And yeah, there's been a bunch of developments from for FPL. There's been a bunch of news that's come up, so I want to go through those. Let me start off with the big news first of all. It's that we've got the scores here. What I've got on the screen is the scores for the Carabao Cup. It's kind of like the third tier competition in England. Kind of the competition where not a lot of teams take seriously, and you end up with a lot of rotations. Still a fun competition though, and I'm not just saying that because Man City lost, and I happen to be a fan of Man City in the Premier League, so it's actually the case. You know, there's the Premier League, and then there's the FA Cup, then there's the Carabao Cup. I think City did actually want to win the quadruple this season, and this ended that hope immediately. So there's that. But my main point was that City lost and Brentford also lost. So they're both out of the Carabao Cup. What are the FPL implications for this? It's that basically there could potentially be a double game week in game week 20 for City and for Brentford. So City is the more exciting one because they might potentially play at home twice. And one of those is against Sheffield United, and the second one against Brentford. So very, very tasty game week potential, triple captaining in place for Haaland. This is one of those game weeks where you might own Haaland, and it might actually hurt you if you don't triple captain him. So you might captain him, but then get lower in rank because there's so many people who have triple captained them for that game week. So one thing to consider for there. The reason why, just to explain how this goes, right? It's basically the teams who go out of the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup or whatnot. They're the ones who could potentially have double game weeks. In this case, you've got the fixture that was meant to be for Man City in game week 18, right? That was meant to be, I think it was City versus Brentford, if I recall correctly. That one is not happening because City are the only team in the Premier League that participate in the Club World Cup, which takes place in December, and that's around the same time as game week 18. And the fact that they're not participating in that, the fact that they're participating in that means that they don't have to participate in the Premier League. So that's why they've got a blank, and then that fixture has to move to somewhere else. And so because City are out of the Carabao Cup, they get to play a Premier League match when everyone else would be playing the competition which they're still in, which is the Carabao Cup. So you've got City. Yeah, versus Sheffield and City versus Brentford. Amazing game week. The other implication for this is just for people who are thinking of wildcarding. I know that's a big topic now because basically everyone's looking like, do I wildcard now? Do I wildcard game week 9, game week 10? What this does is it gives another opportunity for people who are not looking to wildcard in game week 9 or game week 10. So whoever thinks their team might be good or whoever just doesn't see a need for it at this time, that's another target for you. You could potentially target a wildcard in game week 19, for example. Set your team up for double game week 20 and then maybe triple captain then or something like that. Just be fully ready for it. I'll go more into wildcards later into this podcast, but figured that ought to be the top news over here. More on these fixtures from the Carabao Cup and their implications for FPL. So Okay, sorry. One more thing that I didn't cover is that the reason why, like, the game week 19 is a good shout for a wild card. Like, another thing that adds to that is the fact that this is a year where there's the Asian Cup and there's the African Nations Cup, and those are going to come in the middle of the year. And what happens is that the Premier League still goes; it doesn't stop. And so basically, what happens is that, like, players who would be playing for those corresponding countries in Asia or in Africa have to go and play for their national teams. And so this has happened before, 4 years ago. I think it was 4 years ago, the last one. And what ends up happening is that you get Son. Like what could happen with us is Son, Salah, Mbuemo, Mitoma, Wissa, Onana, all the Asian African players just go to play for their national teams, which means that we won't have them. So it might be a good shout to actually wildcard before then, just so you can plan for those game weeks where you don't have those players. Right. Now back to our topic, which is the rest of these fixtures. And what I want to do is I want to just talk about I think there's a big worry about basically people thinking that their players might not start in the upcoming game week. And a big factor for that would be rotation. And that rotation depends on how many minutes those players played in midweek during the Carabao Cup. So what I want to do first is talk about the injury scares. So Botman is injured. He's on 75% as of the moment. He's a risk for the upcoming match. He might not play. You've got Saka. That was big news, actually. It came like about a few days ago. Arteta mentioned that he might not be available for the Bournemouth game. And you've got Chilwell. Chilwell played 89 minutes in the Carabao Cup game, and he got injured in the final minute. So that's I don't want to condone basically like being happy for any player getting injured, but in my case it solidified my decision. I got very, very lucky with that because I sold Chilwell earlier this week. I took a risk, and he ended up getting injured, and also at the same time Trippier, who I got, didn't play a single minute during the Carabao Cup, so I got very, very lucky there. And unlucky to you if you have any of those players. So those are the injury scares. Now, I'm going to mention the players who didn't play at all first, which and the reason I've mentioned them is because they would potentially play in the upcoming game week. So you've got Eze from Crystal Palace. He played for only 30 minutes. You've got Rashford and Fernandez, 0 minutes each. Very likely to start next week. You've got, for all the double game weekers, or for everyone who like jumped on that trend, there's Morris and Kabore. They both played 15 minutes and 26 minutes respectively. Very, very little. Trippier, 0 minutes, like I said before. Botman, also 0 minutes, but that's because he's injured. It's a bit annoying that Botman is only it's that 75% is annoying because it means you don't have something to fully go on. You can't just sell the player because he might just start. And when you start him, it's about whether you start him or you put him on your sub, or you sell him. But each one of those might be a good decision, and there's factors for each. But it just makes things very, very uncertain. Like if it's 50%, you just sell him and you don't have to worry about anything. But if it's 75%, you might sell him and he might punish you. So I'll talk about Saka in a bit because of that exact reason. Wilson from Aston Villa was not in the squad, so he didn't play a single minute in the Carabao Cup. No worries on him. Haaland, 0 minutes. Salah, 0 minutes as well. And from West Ham, you've got Bowen and you've got Ward-Prowse, who were both not in the squad. So you don't have to worry about those two being rotated. That being said, for Estupinan and Mitoma, both played a lot. So I'll get to the players now who played a lot, who might actually be rotated because of that. Estupinan is a bit of a worry right now. He's playing a lot of minutes. I'm sure De Zerbi might bench him at any point right now. And Mitoma got benched in the last Premier League game. He also played 65 minutes in this. I'm hoping he doesn't get rotated again in the upcoming match versus Aston Villa. Chilwell, as I mentioned earlier, he got injured. Saka was not in the squad, but he's also injured. And Saliba was not in the squad as well. So you wouldn't have to worry. I think a lot of people have Arsenal defenders, Saliba being one of them. Isak played 62 minutes, and Cash played 90 minutes for Aston Villa. And Buemo and Wissa, 90 minutes each, and they got eliminated. So there's a bit of a worry there. Alvarez played 67 minutes, so he's also a bit of a worry. Thing is, with Man City players, it's like, I feel like you just have to keep that caveat in mind. It's that they're probably going to get rotated here now and then, like every now and then, and that's just the one thing that you have to keep in mind. It's like they're going to get you hauls, or they might potentially return, but then there's the odd game week where they might get rotated, and it's worth just to keep that in mind, because even when they do get rotated, it's not the end of the world. It's like they're if anything, it means that they're potentially going to start next week, and then they might give you a contribution to your team. So Alvarez, in this case, he's 67 minutes, right? He played for 67 minutes, and he played for, I think it was half of the match against Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. So hopefully he still starts. I would only worry about Alvarez, I think, when De Bruyne comes back into the squad. And that's not going to be until 2024 as far as we know. Another one that I didn't mention was Gabriel for Arsenal. He played for 90 minutes. Right, so Saka, just to go on to that topic, he's a bit of a risk right now, and Arsenal actually have an easy fixture versus Bournemouth away. I've got Saka in my team, and I'm wondering now what to do with him. The thing is, we've gotten these statements before. Where basically players, a coach would tell you that some player might not play or whatnot. He goes on 75%. And the thing is, the player ends up coming in anyway. And in a lot of cases, and in some of the cases, actually, he'd come in and he'd score. He'd get you a return, or he'd get a haul. So that's the risk with Saka this week. It's many potential outcomes, right? Worst case scenario is that you keep him in your team and he doesn't start, and he comes on for a cameo appearance maybe towards the end of the match. That's the worst case scenario, right? You keep him there and he doesn't do anything. He gets you a 1-pointer, he prevents people from coming on from your bench. But I don't think that's likely to be the case with Saka, because I'd imagine him more as a player who either gets fully rested so that he can come back in the next game week, or I could see him as a player who Arteta might put in to try and win the match. A match that's gone out of Arsenal's control, perhaps, like Bournemouth are taking control of the match and Arsenal want to get back into it, so Arteta might put Saka back in there. That's my prediction. At least that's why I'm actually keeping Saka in my starting lineup. I mean, best case scenario is that you keep him, right? And your mini league rivals sell him, and then he happens to be your differential. So having Saka as a differential in your team is a really, really good shout. It's, out of all the players, he's probably, I think, the second best pick, or second or third at least. Maybe there's Salah competing with him, there's Son, but he's up there with the best of the picks in FPL right now. Having him as a differential in your team is fantastic. So I don't want to miss out on that potential upside, and I don't want to take the risk of selling him, wasting a transfer when there are other, I've already earlier this week already sold Chilwell, and I think also in a lot of people's cases, they want to get rid of their Chelsea players possibly, and Saka wouldn't be the main red flag on their team. I'm not the type of player who just goes crazy with transfers anyway, like going -4, -8 or whatnot. If that's your cup of tea, maybe this decision to sell Saka might be good, but I don't see a lot of potential in it. I don't see. Look, one rationale that you might have going for you is that the potential downside is that he might come in for a cameo appearance, for example, or he might just not give you any points at all. And another thing that you have going for you is that he plays Man City next, so that's a potential double whammy. If you keep him and he doesn't do anything, it's that he doesn't get you anything this week, and then next week he's got Man City at home, and Arsenal struggle big time against Man City. Based on the last seasons, based on their history. It's potentially like their hardest fixture of the season. So, but that being said, though, I'm happy with keeping him to see how this plays out. And especially since, like, basically my bigger fish to fry was Chilwell, and I sold him, and I was happy to use my transfer on Chilwell. Another injury scare is Maddison. So I just wanted to address that. According to Postecoglou in his press conference, he said that it's nothing serious. He said that both him and Son were facing a bit of an injury scare before their match against Arsenal, but they played through both of them. So based on that, he should be clear to play against Liverpool. And I'd be happy for him in that match as well, just based on how Liverpool's defense looks. So I wouldn't worry so much, at least based on what we've heard from the coach about Maddison. Right. So let's have a look at my team and see what I want to do. I want to address one thing, which is the double game week. Some people want to target this, like I mentioned in the last video. Excuse me 1 second. Like I mentioned in the last video, I don't want to go too deep into this because I don't want to mess up my whole team just to target Luton players just for this double game week. There will be other double game weeks this season. I already alluded to a potential double game week where City have 2 home games and where Haaland might be a potential triple captain. So that's something you might want to shuffle your team for. But a Luton double game week, Luton Burnley double game week isn't really the most exciting. My expectations for Kabore, I'm starting him over Estupinan, and I'm starting him over Udogi because they both have harder fixtures and they only have 1 fixture. It's nice when you have Kabore in your team, a double game weeker, because I like the feeling of just, this player doesn't, for example, he doesn't deliver against Everton away, but everyone is done with their matches, and you still have another match at home against Burnley, right? I just like that feeling that there's still a lifeline for him. He's got basically on paper 180 minutes where he could potentially give you a return. And worst case scenario, it could be a red card and it just like eliminates the whole possibility of him doing something. But I mean, on average, he doesn't get a return on both of those matches, and he might get you just 2 points, right? Or maybe he'll just get 2 points in each, and he'll give you 4 points, which is kind of a mini return. So yeah, I like the sound of that more than having a Stupinan who's playing against Aston Villa and Udogi who's playing versus Liverpool. That's why I put him in. If you've got Morris in your team, he's also a good shout. The question is, who do you put him instead of? Because a lot of these, like, you've got a variation of possibly of what you've got over here, right? Of what I've got over here. So Son / Maddison, I wouldn't take them off to put in someone like Morris. I wouldn't take off Alvarez for sure for Morris because he plays for a better team and he's playing an easy fixture as well. All the guys here have easy fixtures, right? Maybe who I would take him off for potentially is Mbeumo, because he's got, like Brentford aren't looking so good. They got eliminated by Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, and just their league form isn't something to boast about. So potentially, if you've got Morris, I would like with this team, I would look into subbing Mbeumo off and putting Morris in. Should be a good shout. But for now, I think a very good logical decision, and hopefully not, I think it's an upwards move rather than a sideways move. More of an upward move than a sideways move, which is getting Kabore instead of Estupinan or Udogi. Right. Okay, so another thing that I want to talk about in this video is wildcards, right? I talked about it earlier in the video, and I just want to mention, because there's a lot of talks about wildcards. It's like some people might look at their team after a specific game week and just say, oh, I'm done with this. Let me just wildcard, get rid of everyone here. They're all useless, whatnot. There's that train of thought, right? I think it's important, in my case, what I do when it comes to wildcards is I wildcard in 2 specific scenarios. My first scenario is if my team is doing like horrible and I don't see just any way of redeeming it. So it's like 3 or 4 game weeks where I'm just getting red arrows, and I can see in my team that there's at least 4 to 5 transfers which I can see as definite upgrades. So not just, a guy who just didn't do well on the game week. No, it'll have to be 4 or 5 transfers that I definitely see as an upside, rather than a sideways move, like getting him for someone who might do well just because they did well on that specific game week. It'll have to be like specifically planned with the long term in mind. Another thing about wildcards is that in that case, you don't have to, like, just because the wildcard lets you change your whole team, it doesn't mean that you have to. So it's more of like the way to look at it is like you want to get from point A to point E. You see a bunch of players that you feel are doing really, really well, and you would like to get them in your team, but it'll take too long, or you'd have to spend a lot of transfer points, and you'd have to spend a lot of money. You don't have the money to be able to do these transfers. So instead of going from point A through B, C, D, and then to E, you'd go directly from A to E. Potentially like 4 or 5 transfers. But at the same time, you have to make sure you know who the assets in your team are, the ones who are bringing you the goods, bringing you the points, and keep those. You don't have to change every single person. Right? A second scenario for doing a wild card is if your team is in okay shape. Right? Your team is in good shape, but you want to try to jump onto an upcoming trend. I'll go into more detail on that. What I want to show you here is basically every team in Premier League and their upcoming fixtures. Okay, their upcoming, what is it, like 7? Yeah, 7 fixtures, right? Starting from game week 8. So a lot of people are eyeing wildcarding during game week 9 or game week 10, and I'll show you the reason why over here. It's because if you look at Man City, right, you've got Man City, Arsenal away, Man United away, and then Liverpool at home and Tottenham at home. That's a rough run of fixtures in these 7. And you've got, Chelsea, some people are getting rid of their players as of now, but they've also got some tough fixtures. So they've got Man City, Tottenham, they've got Arsenal. Right? And they've got Brighton, and they've got Brentford can be, if they pick up form, could be difficult as well. Right? And the swing here, there's a bit of a fixture swing, and that's what people try to plan for. That's what you have to try and look forward to as an FPL manager. It's like to try and find the moments where the trend could be swinging towards one team before they actually happen. So you've got Arsenal here, starting from game week 9. I'm going to say Chelsea away is not necessarily the hardest fixture right now. But look at this, right? You've got Chelsea away, Sheffield United at home, Burnley at home, Brentford away, Wolves at home. That could be a point where you start targeting Arsenal players. Maybe take out some of the players that you might have, like Alvarez, for example, and you could replace them with someone who's more likely to start with Arsenal. Maybe at that point, Jesus would be a good shout. Maybe he'll start more often, and he'll become like at least close to essential, like what he was last season in the beginning of it. You've also got Spurs, really, really good fixtures here, all the way even until the end. Even with Man City away, I think that's a good fixture for Spurs. Like based on how they perform there, they're always that bogey team for Man City, and they always give them a lot of trouble, even in the Etihad. Right? And you've got Newcastle here. Newcastle, really, really good fixtures. You'd want to maybe get someone like Wilson in if you're dialed in on how many minutes he starts through the Premier League. If you're confident with him, this is a good time to get him in. Right? Aston Villa, look at that. It's all green, right? All green. Like people have, a lot of people have Brentford / Brighton assets in their team right now. And that could be the time where you might switch those to Aston Villa / West Ham players in your team. So you and there's a lot of options from them. They're good teams with a lot of good FPL assets. So all of this makes someone like Watkins. He just scored in the last match against Chelsea. It makes him a good pick for this area. And you've got Diaby as well in midfield. He's also a good shot for Aston Villa, right? Yeah, Brentford. They like see their fixtures become harder, and they're not in good form at the moment. So that might be a point where you start to look at selling players like Henry. I know he got injured recently, but you've also got Mbuemo. That might be a time where you might want to sell Mbuemo, even if he's, if he might pick up a point here or there. It's just more potential to get. There's more potential to get points out of Aston Villa or West Ham, at least on paper, based on their fixtures. So, West Ham is the other one, right? You've got Aston Villa away, then you've got these really good fixtures over here. So you'd want to look at Ward-Prowse, you'd want to look at Bowen, you'd want to look at Antonio. Very, very good players. Kufal in defense as well is a good shout. But that's the thing, right? It's a lot of people are eyeing game week 9 and game week 10 because of this. Yeah? Because of, Salah from Liverpool. Look at that on game week 9. Starting from game week 9. Everton at home, Nottingham Forest at home, Luton away, Brentford at home, Man City away, where he's a big game player as well, Fulham at home. Salah right now is looking like a good FPL asset. He's not as explosive as he can be, but he's Mr. Reliable, I think. I think in terms of like how he looks like right now, he's kind of reminding me of how Kane looked like last season. Because Kane wasn't explosive, but he would get you a goal here. Like, he was reliable to get you a return on average every single game week. And that's what Salah looks like right now. That being said, Kane is also a person who, like, not a lot of, like, he wasn't what you might call essential last season. So a lot of players just went around him, and they managed to find the points without getting Kane in their team. And Salah is kind of in a similar situation right now. But when the fixtures turn for him, and he becomes, I think he's going to be as close to essential as you can get with these fixtures in mind. And yeah, so those are the two scenarios where I think you might want to wildcard. It's to jump on a trend before it comes, or when you see a fixture swing that comes in, or if your team seems irredeemable. For me personally, I'm trying my best to save my wild card. I like having all my chips for later in the season. I like, like with the wild card, this is the way I see it, right? If I, for example, wild card we've got the deadline for using it before the first half of the season ends. Right, so basically the last chance for me to use it would be on game week 19. If I use it then, and I shuffle my team completely, then I'll have game week 19 until potentially game week 30 to play with that wild-carded team. And then I can use my second wild card for the last stretch of the season between game week, and like wild-card 2 would be used between game week 30 and game week 38 to try and make a push. If I'm struggling in my mini league and I want to get to the top of the league, then that could be a scenario where I might want to use a wild card then. So I just like the aspect of having my wild card late in the season, saving my chips for them, because I can see how things are unfolding, and I can see, there'll be a chip that I've got in my pocket which I can use to hopefully get an advantage on my opponents in my mini league. I want to talk about team value. I want to talk about team value and the importance of it. When you should be concerned about, like, for example, I've got this player, he's decreasing in value. A lot of people are selling him. His price is going down. Should I sell him? Or the opposite of that, it's like, oh, this player is increasing in price. Should I buy him ASAP, or should I wait until maybe I'm sure that he doesn't get injured? So, like basically the question I want to answer is, when should you be concerned about team value? And I think the answer for that is perhaps, but I think it should be more of a secondary thought rather than something that you base all your transfers around. So it's a nice bonus to have. It's a nice bonus to have if your team value is high, because it makes you eke out that extra 0.1, 0.2, or whatever you might need in order to get that ideal team that you're looking for. But would I kind of go crazy about it? Would I try to like shuffle in a player? Would I try to get someone and take a big risk knowing that he might get injured? Or would I take a risk on this certain player just because a lot of people are selling him, or like just based on that? I think there's a lot more factors to consider before I do something like that. I'll give you an example of when it might be useful, and just to kind of show you like how it works, right? So first of all, how does the money come into play? It's, let's say I've got Trippier over here, okay, and I got him for 6.5 million, and then I want to sell him in a few weeks, and at that time so many people have got him that he's become 6.9 million, right? I'd sell him at that point, and he'd become but I would sell him when he's 6.9, but I wouldn't be selling him for that amount. I'd be selling him for 6.7. So the way FPL does it is it calculates the average between the price you bought him at and the price you sell him at. So if I bought him at 6.5 and I sold him at 6.9, then I get 6.7 out of selling him, the midway point between those two numbers. So that being said, the way this helps me is, let's say I want to get Salah in my team. So just, Rashford to Salah, I think it's the easiest route for me. And I want to downgrade Trippier. That I feel like that's my best route towards getting Salah without going too crazy. So if I want to downgrade from Trippier, I would want to ideally get someone like Botman, or I'd want to get someone like Cash, or I'd want to get someone like, I don't know, maybe another Newcastle defender like Burn. Then it would make sense for me. Like this move would kind of be a double upside, because I'd get another Newcastle defender, but also at the same time I've upgraded Rashford to Salah, which is the main guy I've wanted to go for, and I wouldn't be at so much of a loss. But because my team value isn't that high, I didn't get the value that I needed from Trippier, then my money is only 4.3, and I can't get those ideal picks. I'd have to downgrade Trippier to someone who doesn't even start. Someone like those really, like those good defense picks are all at least 4.6, maybe 4.5. You could stretch it and try to find someone who's okay in that range. But that's how team value can come back to haunt you if you don't have that extra 0.1. You didn't gain that extra 0.2. But that being said, like where did I lose team value on this team? In my case, it's because I got Alvarez a bit late. His price was already increasing. And also in my case, I I didn't sell Gabriel, and I didn't sell Pickford. And both of them have been decreasing in price because everyone just kept selling them away. Gabriel was injured for he wasn't starting, like a few matches in a row. Everyone sold him. I kept him in my team. And now he's proven to be like, a reasonable asset. I've got my foot in Arsenal defense now. He started the last 2 games, and hopefully he'll continue to start. And so my point is, like, I didn't want to sell him at the time, and I didn't let team value guide my decision because I felt like I could still benefit from Gabriel, and also at the same time someone like Pickford, I didn't feel like he was the transfer to make at the time because there were other fish to fry. With Alvarez, it was also the same thing. I would have liked to have him in my team, but I would have liked to address the other fires that were in my team more than going for someone like Alvarez. So that's where team value is. I think my conclusion on this is that consider that it might be an advantage, but consider it as more of a luxury rather than something you might want to overthink about so much. It's important in FPL, like while it's good to plan, it's also like important to realize that sometimes you just have to play the game week that's in front of you. And if the game week in front of you is telling you that, this guy is a red flag, you'd have to go for that and not focus too much on team value. So yeah, I hope you got some value out of this video. and wish you all the best for the upcoming game week. I would say on the injury concerns, maybe wait until the press conferences come out tomorrow, and hopefully that gives you some more info to try and decide what you want to do with this upcoming game week when it comes to transfers or when it comes to who you want to sub. If you've got someone like Botman, if you've got someone like Saka, we've got the press conferences. They usually come in afternoon time tomorrow. By then, just be on the lookout and see what happens when it comes to your players. Best of luck for the upcoming game week. Hope you all get green arrows, and I will see you next week.